Hi there, welcome back to Ball Buggers. I'm Steve, and today we're making whiskey out of popcorn. Popcorn, not popped corn, but popcorn. A little bit of a story behind that. When we went into lockdown here, I didn't have a travel permit, so I couldn't get around. I couldn't get to the Agrimart and to get my corn and wheat and whatever else I needed. So I was pretty much stuck at supermarkets and went out looking for popcorn for my daughter. I realized in the aisle that this is corn. Why won't it work? And that's where we started. So, popcorn whiskey. I've seen other guys around the world do similar versions to what I do. Basically, put it this way, I follow the guidelines of a recipe called the UJSSM, which is Uncle Jesse's Simple Sour Mash. What I do, I've taken based on that. It is, if you are starting out to make a whiskey, as a sour mash, it is probably the easiest and most hassle-free type of whiskey to make. I like the sort of bourbonish, leaning towards the bourbon side, so I enjoy it. It makes a very decent product. The thing about the Uncle Jesse's Simple Sour Mash was that it doesn't require you having to make a porridge and having to stir through that gloop and stuff like that. I blame it, I've got a bad back, I'm sticking to my story. So, popcorn. As it stands here, if I threw this into a bucket with yeast and some sugar, I'm not going to get anything out of it, because the yeast won't be able to get to the sugars inside the seeds. Alright, so how do I get past that? Well, thanks for asking. I germinated. Just like you did as a kid, or if you've got kids, a little bean inside 2 pieces of cotton wool on the kitchen sill, windowsill, a little bit of water. 9 times out of 10 you forgot about it, but the bloody thing still grew, and that's what we're going to do here, just on a slightly bigger scale. So, when I started with this, we tried the sort of slow route and controlled route, you could say, because we weren't sure. Hey, there are not many of us that have germinated popcorn out in the real world. If you're a farmer, I'm sorry, but for us office dwellers, so I just got these from my neighbor. What we did was we used these to put them in, and it's a good way just to try out and see that it works for you or not. So what we do is I would perforate holes in one, just poke some holes in, all right? That way this goes into there. You put your popcorn in here, and then you fill that up with water. The perforated holes will come in very handy later, all right? Because they're small containers, it's very difficult. You're going to have to stir it up every now and then. By having it perforated, you just have to pull out the top one. The water will drain out, and that'll give you a much easier environment to shake the seeds up. All right, so that's how I did it before. I've sort of, when running the big still, I need a lot more popcorn to be germinated. So I started using buckets. It is very easy. It's not complicated at all. You don't need fancy gadgets and stuff like that. Literally, you need a bucket. Okay, I'm using a small one here. I normally use one of my 25-litre buckets. Works just as well. I will. It's as easy as dumping it in. All of them. I'm just basically doing a kilo for the video. Alright, so that's my popcorn in there. Basically, nothing to it. There's no magic trick involved or anything like that. I then take water and I make sure I cover it. Okay, I will actually put a little bit extra, maybe about a centimeter and a half above. What's going to happen is that the popcorn is going to absorb some of the water, not all of it, but some of it, depending on how large a volume you stick it into the bucket. So it's best to just keep an eye on it and gauge it the first couple of days in the beginning, just so that you are not running dry. You run them dry, they're not going to grow, obviously. Right, so, and that's it for now. I am literally going to now leave this for about 12 hours. So when I wake up in the morning tomorrow, all I'll do is I'll empty the water out, put some fresh water in, just like you would if you had given your wife some flowers. Okay, then you wouldn't be watering them, your wife would. But simple as that, just give it fresh water. And I'll do that for 2 days. So I'm going to pretty much leave this. I'll put a tea towel over it just to make sure with the heat that I don't have any bugs looking for water, and my daughter's cats don't drink out of it. I'll leave that, just change the water every 12 hours, probably for 2 days, and then we'll get back to the next lot. So, and then we'll see where we go from there. I'm looking forward to this one. Cheers guys, see you in the next clip. Okay, so back in the morning, as you can see, the water levels dropped quite a bit. Well, maybe not the water level, but the popcorn has absorbed a bit of water and it's almost not covered. So getting there now, all I'm going to do is pour the water out. I prefer not to do this over the sink in case I end up running it down the drain. I didn't get everything out, but like you would with your kids' school project with the bean and the cotton wool, you want to keep it as fresh as possible. Alright, now I'll put in fresh water. Also again, about finger depth over the current popcorn. Now it shouldn't absorb too much more than what it has already. Well, a little bit. And that's pretty much it for this start of the second day. Well, we're not even, I suppose second day. And we'll cover that up and come back in about 12 hours and do it again. And then tomorrow we start the germination phase of everything. Right, nothing wrong with this. You can see it's a little bit discolored from the popcorn, but that, we'll just turf that and off we go. Okay, so it's now we've now done 2 days. These are starting to get nice and soft now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to drain this water out. I'm just going to pour it into, I'm going to throw this water away anyway. Don't have to get all of the water out, but I want to get most of it out. Okay, because now, hey, there's a runner. Okay, so now we're sort of going for the cotton wool phase of the little bean on the kitchen windowsill maneuver. So this is pretty dry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a wet tea towel and stick it in here. I would suggest that you use an old one and just wet it, because it is, don't use the wife's favorite one, otherwise it's going to discolor like this one has. I've used it quite a few times. Alright, so now I leave that. What I will do though is now on a daily basis, best thing to do is to keep this in an area where you're not going to forget it. Okay, the reason being is that and I'll show you on the next clip when I come and do it again, is we need to just rotate the corn so that they're all getting to the bottom, they're getting a bit aerated, they're getting moisture from the cloth, and that whole process then is going to be, sort of evened out across all the popcorn. Okay, we're in day 3 now, and they are starting to sprout. You can see the roots and stems are just starting to come through, so this is good. Some of them are going a little bit faster than others. That's normal. You can see that one's quite long. Not a problem. Okay, and then nice and damp. So what I'll do is gonna just re-soak the cloth. One good thing to do too, as it starts to now germinate, the amazing thing about this now is it will actually start to generate heat. So we need to remember, and from now on every day is just to move it around a bit. That'll break the temperature down slightly. And once it starts germinating, you have to remember you need to do that on a regular basis, at least twice a day. Okay, back to end of another day. They are starting to really look good now. All right, these are done. They're starting to green out, so I'm going to, you can see these, oops, cat's going to love that. You can see these are taking shape now. All right, so I just want to show that if you tilt it up, they're going to mat together. That's good. It means that they are definitely sprouting. You just need to watch for that and give it a shake up. Stir it up so that they aren't forming too much heat in between each other. But I'm happy with this. So it's now time to get this dried, and then ready to start fermenting. All right, I'm not going to bother with the cloth right now. I'm going to let this start drying out now, bring in a rack, and go from there. Okay, so I've got this, I use this, I just made a simple, sort of like a little wooden tray. Get all those out. Okay, this is just used to even it out and let it dry evenly, and then I'll put it outside in the shade, in the sun, sorry. With the weather we're having here at the moment, it's quite hot, so these will dry out pretty quickly, and then I may throw away. All sorts. Okay, this is my popcorn that's busy drying out. You can see here fresher ones, and these are almost dried out. I've got the chicken mesh here just to stop the birds from getting at it, but it's coming along nicely. Okay, welcome back. So I've got 3.5 kilos here of my germinated popcorn that has now been dried out properly solid, thanks to the good sunny weather here we got in South Africa. Alright, now about the UJSSM, Uncle Jesse Simple Sour Mash. Like I said before earlier in the video, this is the best way to learn how to make a whiskey if you're a beginner. I still believe, even if you do tinker with other stuff, I would give it a bash anyway. It's a very rewarding recipe. It's known around the world, and it's bloody famous, and I love it to death. First of all, mainly because I don't need to, like I said before, use boilers and have to boil up crushed corn and all that other stuff. It becomes, I'm not set up that way. When I started making this, I fell in love with it, and it was popular with my friends and family, so I didn't have to buy all the equipment. Actually, I do have some, so we'll edit that out, but no, we won't. Okay, so what is Uncle Jesse's Simple Sour Mash? like I said, it's world renowned. It is probably one of the most famous home distilling recipes that are out there. And I'm glad I got onto it, because for me it's a winner. So in the Uncle Jesse sour mash, simple sour mash, he uses corn, and then it's called cracked corn. So it goes through a crusher and just splits up the kernels of the normal corn, right? I didn't have corn to get going because we were in lockdown and I couldn't travel. So for me to crush the popcorn, it's a little bit difficult, especially if you don't have a crusher for starters, but also because the popcorn is so small, it's sometimes not that easy to have done anyway. So what I decided to overcome that was to rather germinate it. That sort of splits the seed up anyway. It also converts the proteins, so I get a little bit more out of the popcorn if it was just solid. So basically the recipe is corn flavored sort of sugar wash, if I can put it that way. I'll probably get a few comments to correct me on that, and I appreciate it. It's a little bit hard remembering what you want to say here, but this honestly is a recipe that I truly appreciate learning and going through. It teach me a lot, taught me a lot as to how to operate the still, how to do all the oaking stuff and like that, the bottling, the filtering. This is what I learned on, and it is I cannot emphasize enough, it is the best recipe to learn how to make a whiskey. Alright, so going on to the recipe, basically all it is, I do the fermenting in 25 kg buckets. So I've knocked it down. I don't fill it up to exactly 25 because it's brought down a little bit. So what I did was I scaled the recipe down slightly so that I've got a little bit of headroom for any fermentation bubbles and stuff like that. What I didn't want to do is what they call puking, where the foam starts to come up through the bubbler. So just to make sure I never had that problem and leave a mess everywhere, I just toned it down a little bit and made my water content in my bucket my fermenting bucket slightly lower. So my recipe I've sort of brought down to 3.5 kilos of the popcorn and 3.5 kgs of sugar, which I will dissolve in water, and then once that's boiled I will put that straight on top of the popcorn in the bucket, and then top that up with cold water till I get to a temperature that I can pitch my yeast into, and then that's as simple as it is. No mess, no fuss. So the sour mash as well, it leans towards the bourbon side of the whiskey range. This is what I also appreciate about this recipe, is that it's a generational thing. So my first pitch will be my first generation. It's technically still not called a sour mash. A sour mash is when you take the back set after distilling it the first time, and you've got what's left over in your still. You use some of that to add to what you fermented on the first generation, but we'll go over that in the next video. Now then that becomes the second generation, where we ferment it again. It adds that back set with the flavor of the popcorn or whatnot, goes into the second batch generation, and it adds flavor. Now a lot of guys have said yeah, it actually, the flavor builds as you go along. It does. It's fantastic, and it's actually quite amazing the change in taste as you go from generation to generation to generation. So yeah, it becomes a sort of a non-stop learning curve as you go along. So having said that, I'm going to go and dissolve my sugar and get this banged into a fermenter. So let's get cracking. Well, not cracking, we germinated. Okay, so I got my bucket, I filled it up with the water. Had a little bit of a technical issue because I decided to hydrate my yeast and then forgot about it for a bit, so it started overflowing, so I bunged it in quick. I just, again, I know some people are going to have comments about it. I just use a local brewer's yeast that you can buy in a sachet at a supermarket. The whole idea about this was to make it as simple as possible and as easy as possible with stuff that people can get readily. So there are better yeasts out there, however it works, so why not use it, and it's not going to break your bank. So with that then on, I'm going to put my lid on. Basically all I've done is I've taken the lid that I've bought with the bucket, put a hole in it, put the glue gun to it. There's a little bit of rubber hose, a little thin one, and this is just a tiny little, it's like a screw jar that you would get at a builder's, at a hardware store to keep screws and nuts and bolts and stuff. I just took a screwdriver and heated up with a heat gun. Just poke 2 holes in it, fill it up with a bit of water, and then that just goes in one of the holes. You obviously need 2 holes. That's for one to push the CO2 out, and the other to let it escape. Otherwise, it's going to pop off. All right, and that will then stop the oxygen from getting in. It's going to push the oxygen that's in there now out, and then start bubbling. So that should get going shortly. Helps if you put it in. All right. So this now I'm going to stick in my garage and leave that for, it'll take anywhere 10, about a little bit over a week, so it'll be 10 to 14 days tops. With the weather that we're having, it might be a little bit quicker because of the heat that we're having. Obviously not, you don't want it too hot, otherwise you're just going to boil it, but it'll be comfortable in the garage. And then once that's done, we can tap off and put it through the store. So, hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it made sense. If it didn't, drop me a comment and I'll reply as much as I can. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, give us a like and a subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends. Cheers guys. See you in the next video.